Before Edward could reach London, the Second Battle of St Albans took place in February 1461. Warwick's army, who were defending London, were taken by surprise and King Henry VI was released from captivity, dealing a blow to the Yorkist cause. But Edward would not be deterred. The decisive clash came at the Battle of Towton on March 29, 1461, one of the largest and bloodiest battles ever fought on English soil, with as many as 65,000 men on the field. As snow and wind battered the soldiers, the Yorkists deployed their archers with the wind at their back, allowing for greater range, and wreaking havoc into the Lancastrian lines with a single volley. And from there, the Yorkist army continued to outplay the Lancastrian forces, forcing them into advancing into more accurate range of the Yorkist arrows, which either found home in the flesh of the enemy or stood upright in their path. Edward displayed incredible battlefield prowess, taking command of the left flank after a surprise attack sent it into disarray. His example on the battlefield inspired those around him and showcased his leadership. Despite this, it was only when Norfolk's men arrived on the field that a conclusive victor began to emerge. His attack on the Lancastrian men secured victory for the young York. The battle was a massacre, with thousands of men cut down in the freezing mud and snow. Towton was a catastrophe for the Lancastrian cause. Henry, Margaret and Edward fled to Scotland, where Margaret and Edward sailed to the continent to gather support from France, while Henry VI remained in Scotland. Edward of York was crowned Edward IV of England and began his rule. Later, in 1463, the Queen Mother to King James III of Scotland, who had been pivotal to the support of Henry, died, and so Scotland sued for peace with Edward. Henry once more sought refuge, heading back into England, now a fugitive. Following the defeat of the last Lancastrian loyalists at Hexham, Henry was captured and imprisoned in the Tower of London. Edward seemed poised to usher in a new era of stability, but not for long. Edward decided on a secret marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner and widow of a Lancastrian knight. This shocked the court and alienated many of his closest allies, none more so than the Kingmaker himself. The Kingmaker, once the king's greatest supporter, felt betrayed. He had hoped to marry Edward to a French princess to secure a powerful alliance, but Edward's impulsive marriage to Elizabeth Woodville thwarted those plans. Angered by his diminished influence, the Kingmaker began to plot Edward's downfall. In a dramatic turn of events, Warwick allied himself with Edward's own brother, George, Duke of Clarence, who harboured ambitions of his own. Together, they raised an army against Edward IV, plunging England back into civil war. In 1469, the Kingmaker and Clarence defeated Edward's forces at the Battle of Edgecote, capturing the king and briefly taking control of government. However, their coup was short-lived, lacking support, and Edward, a master of political manoeuvring, was released and resumed the throne. The plot had been for nothing, and the Kingmaker and Clarence had outed themselves as treacherous. The Kingmaker was invited by Louis XI to join the cause of Margaret and Henry,